Welcome to this video. Today we gonna talk about Dorothea Puente. Make sure you subscribe and like. Let's get started. Introduction. Dorothea Puente's case is one that still haunts people to this day. Behind the image of a sweet, elderly caretaker lurked the heart of a manipulative and cold-hearted killer. Known to her neighbors as a kind woman who took care of the elderly and disabled, Dorothea Puente became one of California's most notorious serial killers. What seemed like an ordinary boarding house turned out to be the scene of unimaginable horror. How could a woman, trusted by so many, become one of the most sinister figures in criminal history? Today, we explore the chilling story of Dorothea Puente, a woman whose crimes shocked the world. Early life of Dorothea Puente. Born on January 9, 1929, in Redlands, California, Dorothea Puente's childhood was far from ideal. She grew up in a tumultuous environment, facing the loss of both parents at a young age. Her mother died when she was only 7 years old, and her father died soon after. After this, she was raised by her grandparents, but this wasn't the stability she needed. Puente's early life was filled with abandonment, neglect, and loneliness, which would go on to shape her decisions as an adult. Her adult life was equally as troubled. Puente married multiple times, each relationship ending in disaster and divorce. She found herself in abusive relationships and struggled with issues of theft, fraud, and petty crime. Despite these struggles, Puente always seemed to find a way to manipulate those around her, using her charm and cunning to further her own desires. She was a woman used to taking advantage of people, and this behavior would eventually set her on a dark path. The decision to start a care facility. In the early 1970s, Puente came up with an idea that would earn her praise from the community. She decided to open a boarding house for the elderly. This facility was meant to be a haven for vulnerable seniors, those with no families or means to care for themselves. Puente, with her friendly demeanor, soon earned the trust of the elderly community in Sacramento. Her neighbors admired her for the care and shelter she offered, believing she was a compassionate woman who wanted to help those in need. What they didn't know was that behind her facade of kindness, Dorothea Puente had far darker intentions. She was manipulative and had a hidden agenda, one that involved preying on the very people she promised to protect. Her boarding house, which once seemed like a godsend to the elderly, was actually a trap. The murders. Over the years, Puente's boarding house became the setting for a series of grisly murders. She specifically targeted elderly people who were alone, vulnerable, and living off their social security checks or pensions. These were individuals who trusted her, believing they had found a safe place to live. Puente would often sedate her victims with sleeping pills or other drugs, rendering them unconscious. Once they were asleep, she would either smother them or, in some cases, inject them with lethal doses of drugs. She would then steal their money, cashing their social security checks or taking their personal belongings. Puente was careful in planning her murders. She took steps to cover her tracks, but her ultimate plan was to kill the elderly for financial gain. Her manipulative skills were frighteningly effective. She knew how to win the trust of the elderly and those in need, using her caring persona to mask her dark intentions. She preyed on those who were isolated, often with no family to speak for them. The discovery of the murders. The truth about Dorothea Puente's crimes didn't come to light until 1988, when one of her tenants, Ruth Monroe, died unexpectedly. Ruth's death was initially believed to be from natural causes, but after an investigation, it was found that she had been poisoned. This led the authorities to take a closer look at Dorothea Puente's operations. Once they began investigating, they uncovered a horrific reality. The police started digging in the backyard of Puente's boarding house and made a shocking discovery. In the garden, they found the remains of at least 9 people, all buried in shallow graves. As they continued their investigation, they found even more evidence suggesting that Puente may have been responsible for many more deaths. The elderly people she had promised to care for had instead become her victims. The arrest and trial. Dorothea Puente was arrested in 1988 and charged with the murders of at least 9 people. At first, she maintained her innocence, claiming that her tenants had simply died from natural causes. But as the evidence mounted against her, it became clear that her story was a lie. During her trial, the prosecution presented compelling evidence, showing how Puente had systematically murdered and exploited her vulnerable victims for financial gain. Puente's trial began in 1990, and after an intense legal battle, she was convicted of 6 murders. She was sentenced to 2 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. It was a conviction that sent shockwaves through the community and exposed the dark side of a woman who had been trusted by so many. The motive behind the murders. What drove Dorothea Puente to commit such horrific crimes? The motive behind her murders was clear: money. She had an uncanny ability to manipulate others, especially the elderly, who were reliant on their pensions and social security checks. Puente carefully selected her victims, making sure they were isolated and dependent on her. Once she gained their trust, she took advantage of their vulnerabilities, stealing their money and ultimately taking their lives. Her crimes were calculated, and her ability to blend into society while committing them made her even more dangerous. Puente's charm and manipulative skills allowed her to continue her deadly spree for years, all while maintaining the image of a caring elderly caretaker. After her conviction, Dorothea Puente was sent to the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, where she spent the remainder of her life in solitary confinement. She continued to insist that she was innocent, appealing her conviction numerous times, but her appeals were consistently rejected. On March 27, 2011, Dorothea Puente passed away in prison at the age of 82 from natural causes. Her death marked the end of a long and horrifying chapter, but the legacy of her crimes lives on. Her story remains one of the most chilling examples of manipulation and deception in modern criminal history. The legacy of the case. Dorothea Puente's case continues to serve as a powerful reminder of the dangers of trust. She was able to deceive people into believing she was a kind-hearted caregiver, but her actions revealed a darkness that few could have imagined. Her story is a disturbing example of how someone can hide behind a facade for years, using charm and manipulation to hide their true intentions. The case of Dorothea Puente has had a lasting impact on how society views caretakers and those who work with vulnerable populations. It serves as a stark reminder of the need for vigilance and the importance of questioning those who appear too good to be true. Conclusion. Dorothea Puente's story is a chilling example of how manipulation, greed, and the exploitation of vulnerable people can lead to devastating consequences. Was she simply a product of her tragic upbringing, or was she always a predator hiding in plain sight? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that explore the darkest corners of human nature. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more investigations into some of the most chilling mysteries of our time. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into real-life crime stories. What do you think of this case? Was justice served, or did it fail those who needed it most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And I see you in the next video.